Why are AAA games getting worse? This is an Actman video. He makes really good videos. I'm going to switch my camera back over to the other side here. He generally does like kind of his own review style, which is more like, I would say, ranty. But this one's about something that I kind of stated, I think when, no, it was when Helldivers 2 came out. I said that it appeared as though the games that were excelling were not the AAA games. Like the AAA games were failing. Suicide Squad had just flopped. Pal World blew up. Helldivers 2 blew up. All of which were, I mean, you could argue that Helldivers 2 is a AAA game. Maybe he goes into that. But they were all games that were not priced at $70 and were not full priced games. And they were the ones that were excelling. So I'm very curious to hear what he has to say about this, because this is something that I feel like has been happening too. But
this new Star Wars Outlaws game looks pretty great.
That's pretty good.
You know what? Let's check out the official website and see if we can learn more about
Oh, I know where he's going.
Lord, what is happening in there? Pre-order. Get 3 days early access. Pre-order. You want to pre-order the season's pass? And get 3 days early access. Pre-order. There's four pre-orders on one screen. Extend K's journey with 2 upcoming DLCs. You want to play the exclusive Jabba's Fuckhouse? Pre-order. Unlock exclusive cosmetic pet.
I didn't
Pre-order.
expect
Are you
this.
fucking pre-ordering yet?
You know what's funny? If you go to the Arrowhead Games website and just
oh, he
look
is gonna go straight into the Helldivers 2 thing. Okay, so this is actually something I planned on talking about later in the stream. But Ubisoft is like upping their price of their games. Like if you want to play the full thing and have the day one DLC and like everything, it's like $130, or you buy their subscription service. I'm assuming that's where he's going with this, but that was a hilarious intro.
There's something special about an Arrowhead game. Games should challenge the creativity of the individuals who play them. We want our games to help forge friendships. And look at that. Not even an advertisement for the Super Citizen Edition. I think this is a great way to illustrate what AAA gaming has become and what indie gaming has evolved into. The difference in priorities is clear, and you might assume...
Is Helldivers 2 considered an indie game? Because like they're not produced by Sony, but they're oversaw by Sony, so I don't think they're an indie studio.
It's just typical Ubisoft greed and shenanigans. But you're wrong. It's worse than that. What Ubisoft is doing with Star Wars Outlaws is symptomatic of a much greater issue plaguing all of AAA gaming. Recently, Ubisoft dropped a story trailer for Outlaws. I watched it, and I felt apathy. As you know,
apathy is death.
The gameplay reveal for Outlaws looked solid, but now I'm skeptical.
If you don't know what apathy is, it's essentially feeling nothing.
Maybe it was the boring writing, the generic presentation, or the fact that they're directing people towards the $120 version of the game instead of the standard version.
Hello, I like money.
Still, I don't remember the last time I felt indifferent to a new Star Wars game. On the flip side, one of my buddies sent me a trailer for a game called Kingmakers. I've never heard of this
I've seen this
franchise
trailer.
nor the studio behind
I hope he
it, but
shows
let's
it.
check it out.
Yeah.
What the fuck is this? Oh my god! This is a fucking Chevy truck in the... Oh, we're giving shotguns?
You get to bring like
How
future
can the
tech into
engine
old
handle
wars.
This many guys on screen. This is like Mountain Blade plus Dynasty Warriors with time travel? And grenades? Oh my god, and they have RTS mechanics? No shot, no shot. It can't get any crazy. And helicopters too?
Here's the question of the day. Why, as a huge Star Wars fan, am I more excited for this and not this? Well, the answer is obvious. It's Ubisoft. But like I said, AAA gaming has been in decline for some time. Meanwhile, indie games have become a spawning pool for creativity and imagination. You may have seen the plethora of AAA gaming is dead videos spring up on YouTube. Well, AAA gaming didn't just die. It was murdered.
Should have played the CSI music.
Welcome back to 2017 YouTube. Clearly, I'm not the only one who has felt disillusioned and apathetic towards recent AAA titles. But a lot of people focus on how AAA games have gotten worse. They highlight the obvious: excessive monetization, unfinished products being released.
Yeah.
I can't masturbate to this character. And while these are all issues worth pointing out, we need
Where did that come from?
to to understand why these things are happening. The bigger picture. You see, the reality is AAA games have become far too safe, formulaic, predictable, and just unexciting. Perhaps it's because you're an old, jaded nerd, Act-Man. No, that couldn't possibly be it.
Am I so out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong.
That's what we're going to explore today. The decline of AAA gaming and the rise of indie.
Why has AAA gaming gotten so bad?
Now, first off, what the fuck does AAA actually mean? The Advanced Art
Okay, he is gonna go into it.
Association? Because I'd love to join that club. No, instead you should join my public Discord server, the Act Clan. Links in the pinned comment and in the little card up here. But the acronym originally referred to large budget, high profile games developed by reputable studios released by major publishers. You know, Halo, Call of Duty, Warcraft, The Witcher, 50 Cent Bulletproof, Cory in the House. Games that would shake the very foundation of the world. AAA games typically have large teams, expensive marketing campaigns, and copious amounts of funding. The term was taken from the credit industry and applied to gaming once the severely obese corporate fat cats realized video games weren't a joke of a business and could actually make more money than Hollywood.
So basically it's just that video games that have higher funding and budgets are considered AAA.
For business moguls,
But then certain companies are like, oh, well, this is a quadruple A game. Like, what does that even mean?
This is the safest investment you can make to get a return. That's not the case anymore. Today, AAA mostly indicates the aspirations and cost of a game, not how safe an investment it is. From the 80s to the 2000s, there weren't many games that were commercial failures. It was mostly like failed consoles. And that's a good video to watch. But since the 2010s, as AAA gaming budgets have grown exponentially, we've seen some big-ass flops. Marvel's Avengers, Suicide Squad, Anthem, Redfall,
I forgot about
Aliens,
Anthem.
Colonial Marines. And in the last 7 or so years, it also seems like many popular franchises have released what fans consider to be the worst entry in said franchise. Fallout 76, Battlefield 2042, Mass Effect Andromeda. Maybe this is all just a coincidence.
But as one trained in the Force, you know that true coincidences are rare.
So what gives? Why have things changed? Well, one of the driving factors behind the decline of AAA games is they've gotten too big. The pants do not fit anymore. For reference,
So if games have gotten too big, that's an interesting one. If you go back and like look at like the one that immediately came to my mind was World of Warcraft. It's unfathomable how big that game is. If you have never played World of Warcraft, just go into it and don't look up anything and try to figure out what the hell is going on. Like, depending on your character, you start in a different location and there's all this world and then there's these different challenges in the world and then you can level up your like mining and then you can also level up combat and then you can get things and it's unfathomably big. And back in the day, this game was huge. Like, I don't think people realize how World of Warcraft was like one of the biggest. I think the only one that was like bigger than it at a given time is Minecraft, but I could be wrong. World of Warcraft could still have been bigger. And like that game was huge, but I'm curious what he has to say about games getting too big.
Vanilla World of Warcraft was made
I swear to you, I have not watched this video. That was really weird.
by a team of about 40 people. Helldivers 2 was made by a team of 100.
Over 9,000 people contributed to Diablo 4. What?
I see where he's going with it now.
Starfield, 7 years in development, $200 million budget, 1,700 planets to explore.
Todd, you think maybe we could tone that number of planets down to like 30 or maybe 10?
So Starfield, I have a huge problem with. Like the empty planets don't make a good game. Like if you look at Starfield compared to like say Cyberpunk is like this super dense area where everywhere you go, it seems like there's something new. Starfield, it's like there's a million planets to go to and every one of them seems like there's less and less. It's like the complete opposite of each other. And it's very clear to see which one is better and why.
10 really good
The
planets?
gamers desire 1,700 planets.
AAA games have exploded in size, scope, and cost to an unprecedented level. On one hand, a larger team has the potential to create something truly incredible, revolutionary, to realize their greatest ambitions. But this relies on having a cohesive vision amongst many people and the budget and resources to make it happen. However, the more ambitious a project, the more money invested into it, the riskier it becomes. Immortals of Avium, a game you
Oh, this is a
probably
good
never
example.
heard of, was the debut title for Ascendant Studios. And for some inexplicable reason, the game was given a budget of 125 million smackaroos.
Yeah, that's like their first game, and I don't know why they were given that many dollars to make a game for the first time or where it came from.
Making it one of the most expensive video games ever made. What the fuck? Immortals sold poorly, and Ascendant, after releasing their first title, had to lay off almost half of their staff. 6 months later, the remaining employees were furloughed, a fancy word for maybe you have a job, IDK? And the company's future is uncertain. Sometimes memes can spit truth. I want shorter games with worse graphics made by people who are paid more to work less, and I'm not kidding. Immortals of Avium is a mistake that shouldn't have happened, and it's the exact type of reason why AAA publishers are sticking with familiar
in chat, did anyone in chat play that game, Immortals of Avium? I'm just curious. I didn't play it, and if anyone did, let me know what you think of it in chat. I have no idea. I think I watched a review of it from like Skill Up, and he said it was like all right, but I don't really know anything about
and
it.
Playing it safe. You guys excited for Call of Duty 26 to come out later this year? The bigger they are, the harder they fall. But why was Immortals, this random game, bloated with such a ridiculous budget and high expectations? Well, COVID-19 changed a lot of things. People bought a shitload of video games during that time, and some upper management
I'm glad
folks
he's saying this.
adjusted their business. They saw this as an opportunity to invest. So they expanded operations, hired more employees, but of course, the video game
Free
sales
on
caused
PS
by
Plus,
the
but
pandemic
it's on your
didn't
backlog.
last. And we're now seeing the fallout of that overexpansion. Fallout New Vegas. 10,000 layoffs in 2023 and 8,000 more on the way. Over 30 studios were...
So I said this in a previous video, and I got some backlash for it. I said that all of these, like, it's not just video games, but any like tech company during COVID way overhired because they kind of needed to. Like, if there's a reason why your business is going to expand and you literally can't handle it because you don't have enough staff, and it's this temporary prop up of your company, you're going to need to hire temporary employees. But they didn't. They hired long-term employees and then had to lay them all off because they thought that the COVID boom of tech was going to continue afterwards. And of course, once people could actually go and see people again, less people were playing video games. This happened with my YouTube channel. Like, if you go back and look at numbers, the numbers for my YouTube channel exploded during COVID. And I feel like that was a way for a lot of YouTube channels. And of course, that can't keep up because once people can go and do things, they're not just going to be sitting there playing video games every day. Yeah, it probably boosted the numbers overall, and they're probably still making more money off of video games than before COVID. But yeah, it happened.
Were shut down. Several games canceled. The hubris from corporate overlords has uprooted this industry in such terrible ways. Overloading teams with talented employees and a shit zillion dollars isn't some magical recipe for success. In fact, it puts the studio in a much more dire, stressful position, because if the game doesn't sell well, they're fucked. Blockbuster game development costs are out of control. According to a study by the CMA, a single AAA game could have development costs between $90 to $180 million, plus $50 to $150 million for marketing.
Yeah, marketing's
That
out of
Suicide
control
Squad
too.
Game that 200 people are playing probably had an inflated budget. This is clearly unsustainable. It's like every major AAA game is some mass.
Especially when so many of these games are live service games, and you can only play so many live service games. Like, they take up so much of your time that only a certain amount of them are going to be successful. And when already so many of them are already established, Call of Duty, Fortnite, even Helldivers 2 at this point, to take Destiny's another one, to take market cap away from those games and build something new, live service that people are going to play day in and day out and make money, very hard to
live
do.
or die gamble. Naturally, companies want to mitigate and avoid all the risk they can. So again, they rely on
Licensing
established
as well,
IPs
yeah.
and stick with what's familiar, and most of all, safe. So wait a minute, Ackman. You're telling me AAA games have become a greater risk, but also safer?
That's a paradox, John.
Think about it this way. The bigger the budget, the more employees working on a game, the more copies it needs to sell. Therefore, it has to appeal to a lower common denominator. They have to simplify and dumb down something. They cannot take risks or experiment. They have to stick with what.
Okay, I see where the fact that he put Call of Duty footage on that is perfect. I've said this for a while now. I feel like Call of Duty can't experiment and do new things like DMZ because it takes away from their main line multiplayer Warzone, and they can't make these risks because they're scared of losing that main audience. I get what he's saying with this.
To work. This is a huge reason why indie games such as Helldivers 2, Hades, Lethal Company are so much better at innovating on a popular formula or giving us something brand new. Which would you rather play, Back 4 Blood or Deep Rock Galactic? I better see some fucking rock and stone in the comments. But that's the thing, Back 4 Blood is a cheap imitation of what inspired it, while Deep Rock Galactic is a unique twist on the whole four dumbasses trying to accomplish something co-op game. Deep Rock is brimming with charm, style, and this is gonna sound cheesy as fuck, but you can feel the love that went into it. I can't say the same with Back 4 Blood. What are some other examples that illustrate how games have gotten safe? Well, let me ask you this.
Say Call of Duty.
Did you think for 1 millisecond that the Modern Warfare 3 remake was going to do the no Russian scene justice?
No.
Did you think it was going to be as shocking, if not more so?
No!
You terrorist.
No!
You look like one.
Woo! Oh, give the writers a raise. Of course not. Like, even Call of Duty feels like it's been sterilized. But of course, there's some exceptions with, like, Cold War. I mean, that game took some serious risks with its campaign and story. And
Did it?
paid off. Gamers love being surprised.
Yeah, okay,
Love
okay.
being
I see
thrown
where he's
for a
going with
loop.
this.
Because it's so hard.
I'm hoping
to
that does that
now
this
in
year.
the age of the internet and with all these leaks and everything. This is why Helldivers 2's live service is retaining so many players, because there haven't been any roadmaps going into excruciating detail about what to expect. It's why
That's
the Redemption in No
interesting.
Man's Sky hit so hard, because Sean and Hello Games just went into hibernation and came out when they had something to show people. When I say safe, I'm not just talking about the lack of innovation with game design, but also the writing. AAA franchises that used to
I
go
say this
really
all the
hard
time.
with the dialogue now feel tame, like they're pulling punches. I'm not a huge expert on Fallout, so Fallout fans, please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But there is a massive difference between Bethesda's Fallout games and the other Fallout games. In New Vegas, you can literally sell drugs to children. Like that's a real choice you have in the game. You can be an absolute maniac. You can shake down a guy for caps and he'll say, well, you've taken everything but the
This
clothes
is a good
off my
point.
back.
I
And then you
wasn't
can
looking
say,
at it from this
actually,
angle.
give me your fucking clothes too. You know what I mean? Like, for some reason, I just can't picture these types of things being in a new Fallout game. KOTOR 2 is also a fantastic
afraid of
example
offending people,
because
that kind
I
of
doubt
thing.
we'll ever see a Star Wars game that takes the franchise in such a bold direction. KOTOR 2 is a Star Wars game where the main villain wants to kill the Force, destroy the Force, like remove it from the universe, destroy the concept of Sith and Jedi completely. There's no way in Nar Shaddaa we'd ever witness a Star Wars game that delves into that sort of thing. According to Obsidian, Chris Avalon, one of the main writers for New Vegas and KOTOR 2, Obsidian made multiple proposals to develop spin-offs for Fallout and the Elder Scrolls, all of which were turned down by Bethesda.
And I think I've been thinking about this the entire time he's been talking about it. I haven't even actually heard much about the Star Wars stuff. When it comes to like the Call of Duty campaigns and stuff, I think the way he should have worded it is the campaigns have become cookie cutter, where it seems like they just have a template of how they want it to go. Like, oh, bad guy arrives, bad guy does something bad, you stop bad guy, there's a twist with bad guy, maybe one character dies, you kill bad guy, turns out bad guy's still alive, welcome to Warzone Season 1. And it's just, like I said, a template that they're following.
Bethesda. And while we can only imagine the reason why, perhaps it was too risky in their eyes. Here's another example, Halo Wars 2. Console RTS, pretty niche, but its
I forgot
expansion,
about this
Awakening
game.
the Nightmare, was the first time in a decade we saw the Flood in a Halo game. Why haven't the Flood appeared in the main series? Don't want to risk lowering the sales with an M rating, right? M-rated games don't sell too great, do they? Speaking of Rockstar, God, this industry pisses me off sometimes. LA Noire 2.
Was
Where is
awesome.
it? Bully 2? And you might think,
Okay,
well, isn't that
Bully 2. Give me a Bully 2. Bully is amazing.
that hypocritical act, man? You were just complaining about these companies sticking to established IPs. But both of these franchises only have one game. And that's kind of my point. Instead of making one, $400 million game, why not cut a chunk of that out and
Give me
develop
Bully 2.
multiple AA games?
What if they took one of these $150 million AAA budgets and made a couple of $20 million bets with them, right? And just funded a bunch of projects, and the risk is much smaller. And I think that would be very good for the industry. And I wish AAA would take more risks like that with smaller teams. And you would
Yeah,
get
that would be
cohesion.
interesting.
You would get that sort of singular vision, I think, and stronger creativity out of it.
I at least understand this for Rockstar because their games are so overhyped. If they released a sequel that you thought was a 9 out of 10, that would feel disappointing. A bunch of Halo spin-offs were also pitched to leadership at 343, including an ODST-themed game similar to Helldivers 2.
No way.
Imagine what could have been. I guess I just don't understand why the corporate side of game development treats every title like it has to be an all-in bet.
And this is what I've been saying with Call of Duty for the past little while. Like, Call of Duty should have come out with like an MMO or an RPG by now. They should have come out with a full game extraction shooter. They should be working on a survival game in the Call of Duty universe that has the Call of Duty gameplay in it, but they won't because it's too big of a risk.
Do you see what I'm getting at? So many of our favorite franchises that we grew to love because of how bold they were are now playing it safe. And that's why
100%
indie
agree.
and AA gaming is thriving right now, because they can take risks. They're not obsessing over how many people are going to buy the game. The developers of Palworld were like, well, hope this doesn't make us go bankrupt. Indie studios are operating at the level that AAA used to. And when you don't have to make hundreds of millions of dollars to keep your company afloat and not fire your entire studio, you can take risks. And going back to my initial comparison between Arrowhead and Ubisoft, there's a huge difference in the mission statements of AAA and indie games. Baldur's Gate 3 is an indie game. Larian is an independent studio, but the quality is so amazing, you'd assume it's AAA, right? There's this trend of indie developers reassuring customers that they're not gonna nickel and dime us. No, there are no in-game purchases in our game. We believe in providing a complete and immersive gaming experience without
That's a game that I need to play and I just don't have time for.
the need for additional purchases. Vermintide 2 is one of the only games to do loot boxes right because they didn't sell them. At the height of the loot box craze, no less. Helldivers 2 doesn't let you pay for tiers in the freedom passes. Indie developers can afford to be more player friendly because they don't have these investors hanging over their heads and these massive budgets. You might think all these egregious microtransactions is just pure corporate greed, and there's a good chance some of it is, but it's also a safeguard, like a necessity. And I think the solution is just to make games smaller, dude. Now, a really shitty byproduct of this risk-averse mentality is that a lot of these publishers are looking for a quick buck. They want to make easy money. So what do? Bingo! Flood the market with shitty remasters. Boy, there's been an abundance of these lately.
I didn't
The
expect them to
Last
go
of
this
Us
way.
1 on PC, GTA Trilogy.
Oh shit. Here we go again.
Hell, even Dark Souls Remastered sucked major ass. And don't even get me started on the fucking Battlefront collection. Did you know that at one point Warcraft 3 Reforged had like 3 people working on it? Like one guy was supposed to remake all of the cutscenes. And this is so perplexing. These studios dump 10 figures into a new game, but can't even hire 10 people to make a decent remaster. It's like there's no middle ground. It's either no budget or dump the bank account. Meanwhile, Lethal Company, made by one guy. Now, because studios are investing so
Again, a
much,
game
they
I
tend
didn't
to
play, but
interfere
I'm
with the
interested in.
creative process
Watched
to
a bit of it.
insane degrees. They see trends that are making money elsewhere, and they think, well, let's just throw that into our game. I'm funding this. What I say goes. Redfall lost 70% of its Arcane staff during development, struggled the whole way. Development of Redfall began in 2018 as parent ZeniMax was
The craziest thing about Redfall is apparently they knew it was going to suck before it came out.
quietly looking to sell itself and was encouraging its studios to create games as a service projects like Overwatch. Microtransactions were intensely encouraged. However, the problems in trying to develop Redfall surfaced early. Firstly, management kept offering conflicting visions of what the game would and should be, resulting in developer confusion about what they were creating. How to reconcile single-player and multiplayer within an Arcane game was never really resolved either. Secondly, Arcane employed fewer than 100 people, which had been enough to make a single-player game, but was not a healthy number for developing a large multiplayer game with
apparently you need a
microtransactions to
much
manage.
bigger studio to do
Outsourcing work to other
multiplayer.
studios was reportedly not enough to alleviate the strain. As a result of plummeting morale and lack of direction, veteran employees left the company in droves, with about 70% of the staff ultimately leaving Arcane. Redfall is not the only story of its kind. You can look at most AAA flops or AAA games that severely disappointed, and you'll find something similar. Management interfered. Management wanted this. I imagine they feel they have to micromanage these things, again because of the investment. Sometimes with AAA games, it feels like there's too many cooks in the kitchen, and Gordon Ramsay is pissed.
What are you?
An idiot sandwich.
There's got to be a happy middle ground in dev team size. Too small and you feel like the world rests on your shoulders. Too big and you feel like you have zero agency and influence.
One of my favorite games is Stardew Valley, made by one dude. And yes, it's like a kind of like overhead, very low graphics kind of game, but it's amazing game made by one dude.
These big dev teams, especially when they're spread out against multiple studios across the country, can sometimes have very inefficient communication, bureaucracy. Next, Battlefield has the largest development team so far. 1 year later, former DICE dev says 2042 never stood much chance being great at launch. There's a video by Timothy Kane, the creator of the original Fallout, about game development caution.
Oh,
And
I
he
actually
talks
saw
about how
this.
certain things in game development now that could be fixed in 45 minutes now take 4 weeks.
When we
I
were
actually
making
saw
the Outer
this.
Worlds, the combat AI wasn't really in yet, so I asked for a very simple combat aggression code to be added. This is how simple it was. Every time an NPC got shot, they would see if that person was on the list of someone who'd shot them. If they weren't, they'd add them to the list with the amount of damage they just took. If they were already on the list, they'd just add the amount of damage they took. Whenever they're deciding who to attack, they attack the person at the top of the list. That's it. That's all I wanted. The programmer
simple.
who it got signed to came to me and said, I need 4 weeks. And I'm like, why? Walk me through what you're going to do. And he goes, you don't understand. And I was like, I've coded this 3 times. Walk me through it. And he wouldn't. He left. He left angry. Lead programmer came back, started yelling at me, saying, if he says he needs 4 weeks, he needs 4 weeks. And I'm like, then I will do it. I'll have it done before lunch. And he said, no, because then people will have to support your code. I'm like, I'm going to walk you through what I want. And you tell me why this takes 4 weeks. He looked at what I wrote, which was about 10 lines of pseudocode on a whiteboard. And he goes, I'll come back. He came back about an hour later and said, what about 2 weeks? And I said, do you have any options here? Fine. 2 weeks.
You want to fix these lines of code? That decision has to go through 10 fucking departments
Yeah, that's
now. It
true.
needs to be approved by your manager, by your manager's manager. It has
And legal. Don't forget about legal, because if you put something in that legal's not happy about, whoo.
to go through the marketing team, the DEI office. The fucking janitor's cousin has to approve it. Indie developers don't have the same level
very
of
true.
bureaucracy. I imagine if there's a problem with the code, you could just walk over to the cubicle of Jimbo and ask him about it without the fucking HR department breathing down your neck. And you also have to make games that can be released in China. You need that China money. It has to hit certain quotas and scores on diversity, equity, and inclusion to secure funding. And the game needs to have microtransactions for this consistent revenue source, a live service business model, so that makes the investors happy. And can you see how creativity dies in this environment when games are made by committee and not creativity? It also seems like the more employees a company has, the easier it is for you to blend in and not be seen or heard. Indie studios typically have better working conditions with flexible hours. Employees have more creative control. Smaller teams allow the individual to have more influence on a game and a greater impact. I've seen a lot of articles from ex-developers who say, this game wasn't what we intended to make. It wasn't what we envisioned. Disagreements are going to spring up in game development, but it's easier to settle an argument between 2 people than it is 100. At the end of the day, indie gaming has risen.
He's making
where
a lot of good
AAA
points.
has fallen. The decline of AAA gaming is due to the insane budgets, scope, and expectations of these games. how that affects the employees, the work environment, the investors and higher-ups who have to constantly micromanage these games and throw in their own ideas.
Investors and companies always cause problems, right? Because investors don't care what the company produces normally. Investors care the bottom line. They care that they make money. And that's why so many games are pushing this live service and microtransaction, because it's consistent money in their pockets. But they don't care that the product is good or not. That's the problem with investors, and indie companies don't have that. Or if they do, it's people who just want them to succeed.
Ideas when they have no fucking clue what makes a good video game. I feel like a lot of these developers simply don't have the same luxuries and freedom to create art like they used to. Game development in the AAA space is now a committee process where simple solutions to bugs can take weeks, where the freedom to express and create art and take risks is suppressed in favor of creating the generic and the safe. Too many external factors have disrupted what used to be a creative process with the singular goal of making the best and most fun video game possible. It ain't about that no more. This shit has to make money, and a lot of it.
That's what
And
I
it's
was
for
saying.
all these reasons that AAA gaming is declining, and why indie titles are thriving. But what do you think? What are some of your favorite indie games? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Don't forget to join my public Discord server. Links in the pinned comment and the description. Thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did, and subscribe to the Act Man for more awesome content.
That was awesome content. Yeah, I appreciate that video because it's actually an angle that I don't think a lot of people necessarily look at, right? Like that angle that he took was that video games have become too big, and that is why what's going on with them is going on with them. So what I will say about that is, with games becoming bigger and bigger, there is room for that. There's games that are like GTA or God of War or things like that, that these studios consistently put out bangers. Naughty Dog comes to mind, and it's something you don't really have to worry about. That you can invest a bunch of money in them, and they will almost always make that money back. Now, I think the game that I keep using as this example is Alan Wake 2. Alan Wake 2 had a big budget, and it was really good. Game was super critically acclaimed and very good. I don't think they made their money back on it. And that's a big risk for a company to make. So, yeah, good game, not make money because it's a narrative-driven game. And I'm guessing, we were just talking about Hellblade 2, that game might be a very similar circumstances. Now,